Hi, good morning and welcome to meditation. Today is the 12th of April. I would like to read in Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 13. Evil will never leave the house of one who pays back evil for good. So yesterday we saw how King Saul was cursed because of the way he was behaving himself, paying evil for good, paying evil for good. And David, actually the person who became the king after King Saul, he became a writer and a composer. I guess he was already before he became a king. And he wrote in Psalm 35 verse 12, "They repay me evil for good and leave me like one bereaved." We see lots of the things that David said about himself. We saw them in the New Testament. We can see them in the life of Jesus. Actually, Jesus on his human side came from the family of David. And David, in another text, in the chapter 55 of his book of Songs, verses 12 to 14, he says, "If an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. If a foe were rising against me, I could hide. But it is you, a man like myself, my companion, my close friend, with whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship at the house of God, as we walked about among the worshippers." So he was betrayed by his friend. He said, if an enemy were insulting me, he could endure it. If it was a foe, if he was at war, he could hide from that enemy. But how can you hide from your enemy? Maybe the person you went to school together, or you went to church together, to a club, to scout, whatever. You did lots of things with that person, and then your friendship will be broken because there's going to be betrayal. The same thing happened between Jesus and Judas Iscariot. When Jesus chose that man, he just chose him just like he chose the other ones. You're going to see him in a list in Luke chapter 6, 12, 16. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, the two brothers, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called Zealot, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. So he's there. It was actually Luke who added many, many years later that he became a traitor. But he wasn't considered as a traitor. He was just called a disciple. He was even called an apostle. Jesus gave lots to that man. He was there when Jesus was performing all the miracles. He was there when Jesus was teaching about the kingdom of God. He was even there when Jesus was washing the disciples' feet. Jesus was washing Judas' feet as well. How did he repay that? So like in David's story, Judas is going to betray his friend. In Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 to 16, then one of the 12, the one called Judas, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. So you might have seen in a movie or two that people trying to excuse what Judas was doing, saying, well, he didn't know what he was doing. He did know what he was doing. The text says that he wanted to hand Jesus over to those religious people from Jerusalem. He knew what he was doing. He was actually betraying his friend who had to give him so much, so much, as Jesus gave it to the other ones. So the end of that man is not going to be good, because as Solomon wrote many centuries before that, evil will not leave the house of one who pays back evil for good. And Matthew chapter 27, verses 3 to 5 says, when Judas, who had betrayed Jesus, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. And it was his responsibility. But we don't see him, Judas, going back to Jesus to ask to forgive him, like Peter did later on, because Peter also betrayed Jesus when he said, I don't know this man. Actually, we are going to celebrate that this week as we approach Sunday when Jesus rose from the dead, and Friday when he died on the cross. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. He didn't go to see Jesus to ask him to forgive him. He killed himself. It's a tragic story, isn't it? That shows us that there is never going to be good coming out of evil. Never. And to finish this tragic story, Acts chapter 1, 18 to 19, when they were going to choose another person to replace Judas, because they had to be 12. So now there were 11. They had to vote to find another disciple to become an apostle with them. With the payment he received, his writes Luke, for his weakness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong. His body burst open and all his intestines spilled out. Everyone in Jerusalem heard about this, so they called that field in the language Akeldama, that is field of blood. So the end of the story of that man was blood. There is never going to be good coming out of betrayal. God have mercy on us.